Hello, welcome to this webinar. We've got a fantastic group for you today. The webinar today is Future-Proof Your Hiring Strategy, the case for the right technology stack. I'm excited to introduce the panelists we have with us today. My name is Jeff Diana, formerly the Chief People Officer of Atlassian, and I'll be moderating the fantastic group that's joined you for our conversation. Let's get started with Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Newman, founder and Chief Customer Officer of HireVue.
Welcome. Mike, you're next.
Mike Hennessy, founder and CEO of SmashFly Technologies.
Great. John?
Hey everyone, John Bishke, founder and CEO Entelo.
Welcome. And Jason?
Thanks, Jeff. This is Jason Corsello, SVP of Strategy and Corporate Development at Cornerstone OnDemand.
Fantastic. Great group. Let's jump right into it. I know time is precious for us. So my first question to this group will go around the horn, and we'll do it in the same order that you introduced yourselves. But in your opinion, what is the single biggest challenge you see for hiring the talent needed to deliver on a company's growth plans today?
Perfect. Well, I'll jump in here. I think the single biggest challenge that people face is actually kind of being held back by the traditional notion of what talent actually is and what the right talent is for an organization. Because there's a talent supply and demand issue, and that has to cause you to think differently around kind of who could do the job that needs to be done, and to who can do it differently, just even if they don't have the perfect resume or perfect profile. And kind of how do you propagate that across your whole organization to be really inclusive of all sorts of different people from all sorts of different walks of life, with all sorts of different kinds of experiences.
I think it's great, Mark. I think you're right. You're seeing more and more where you can't find the perfect person for the perfect job these days. And so supply and demand is changing how we have to address that.
Right.
Mike, how about you?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for companies today is to change their mindset and how they think about going after talent. And, instead of thinking about it as, jobs and transactions and recruiters, to really think about what's the process that we need to find the right talent on an ongoing basis. So I think that starts with putting the right process together with the right plan. And that would it's hard to get started around what technology do we use? What's the process we're going to implement and who's going to do that? I think you can put those three pieces in place. You can start moving forward and actually executing on that to get the right talent for whether it's this year, next year, or in the next 5 years.
Great. Super helpful. How about you, John? What do you see?
Yeah, so we work with many of the world's fastest growing companies, as I know a number of us on the call do. And I think the thing that stands out the most is that certain types of skills, certain types of people are more in demand than ever, but the supply has not changed. So you have this intense war for talent that I think becomes more intense by the day. And every company is looking for the edge. Every company is looking for something that gives them competitive advantage so they can win that war. So that's the thing that we see on the front lines of this battle with every customer we talk to.
Yeah, I think I might even argue, and we'll talk a little more about it. I think the supply is even getting harder to find, right? But you're right, that equation continues to be forefront in the minds of folks doing hiring. It's great. Jason, how about you?
Jeff, I think maybe I'll approach this a little bit differently, but I think one of the biggest challenges I'm seeing is just companies are slow to change. And this ability to adapt to the changing business, I think a lot of companies just aren't set up to do. We've read PwC surveys that say the biggest challenge that most companies face is to adapt to the pace of change and the rapid pace of technology innovation. And so that's where I think a lot of people and a lot of organizations just to completely change their mindset. When we think about talent acquisition, the jobs that we're going to be hiring for in 2 or 3 years from now are different from the jobs that we're hiring for today. So if we believe that, which I believe that, then how do we set up and set up a way that both the technology and the process can meet that, which is you should be in a constant state of change. You should be constantly evolving what you're doing, both as an organization as well as what you're doing in talent acquisition.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. The pace of new technology releases is getting faster and faster, and the features that come with that changes and new entrants into the market and the like. And that does go into the process side that Mike talked about earlier. Those companies that can get ahead of that have a distinct advantage. So great. Thanks for that. So I think, you guys touched on a few pieces. It is a candidate's market, right? And that's not going to change given the demand and supply dynamics we're facing now and in the future. If anything, I think we'd all agree that that's getting worse. I think we'd also all agree that companies get one shot at making a great impression during the recruiting process. So I'd love to hear from the panelists, and we'll start with you, Mark, on this one. How are today's HR technologies playing a role in the recruitment experience itself? And have you seen a shift in the role that HR technology has been playing over the recent years?
Yes, finally. It took decades for it. I mean, if you think about kind of the generations of technology in our space, the first iteration of bringing technology to the quote cloud, whether you want to call it ASP or whatever you want to call it at that point in time, was let's take these really terrible forms you have on paper and put them online and everything's going to be awesome. And it didn't actually think about it all, like what could you do to make that experience better? At HireVue, I mean, we've been working on this for years and working with leading kind of brand conscious organizations behind it all, where it's like, yeah, you get one shot to make sure that the candidates have an awesome experience. But it's not just like, oh, how do you woo them and how do you do the kind of typical Silicon Valley, like wine and dine and get them in here and whatever. It's like, no, it's a life-changing, a job search and a job interview is a life-changing experience for somebody, whether it's a factory worker in Des Moines or a financial broker or whoever that might be. And a company needs to care about that, just like they care about the experience for their customers every single day. And so technology today, whether it's HireVue with a lot, like kind of a highly immersive video and experience behind that, whether it's things like SmashFly and Entelo and whatever it is around like immersing to make that candidate experience align with the brand experience your company's trying to create, it's really just awesome. What we're finding is the best organizations say, listen, we want the candidates to know as much as they can about the company, be authentic as possible, know about the job, have a preview into the process, know kind of what's expected of them, have them tell their story, give them a shot, and be way more inclusive than we were before. And there's going to be a bigger divide between the companies that get that and the companies that don't.
It's great. Others have anything to add on that, on how the recruiting experience and technology have changed in recent years?
Hey, Jeff, I'll add one thing here is that I think the candidate experience itself starts way before a candidate actually applies. And so companies need to be thinking about it in that aspect is that, you're building a relationship. Your brand is building a relationship well in advance of someone going to your career site and applying for a job. And so thinking about how all these steps in the process fit, certainly, that great culture that companies are building, they need to have great technology that matches that. And often cases, people don't think about that holistic end-to-end experience. I know Mike wants to add something here as well.
Yeah, I just want to echo that and what Mark said. I think that this idea of companies having a more marketing-centric view of how do you find and attract the right talent. And when you think about that, you talk about one of the terms is out there is the consumerization of the candidate experience. Candidates are in control. There's data that shows, as what Jason was just mentioning, 12 to 18 touch points before they ever apply to a company. And so when you think about that, the question is, what is a company doing to have a consistent brand, getting their EVP, their employee value proposition, their stories, their differentiators? No matter where that candidate touches them, they should have a consistent experience. And if the technology is playing the right role there, you're getting the right message to the right candidate at the right time. That's easier said than done. But having the right HR technology stack to pull all that together is really, I think, having a big impact on how companies are recruiting today.
It's amazing to think through those number of touch points you quoted, 12 to 18 touch points, like prior to people deciding whether to raise their hand. It's incredible how much information is out there and is shaping your brand before you know it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the easiest ways to think about it is the fact that how much research do you do before you buy a $100 product online? And to think that you won't do exact the same research or 10 times more when you're actually thinking of what you're going to do for the rest of your life working at a single company.
I think you're right, Mark. And the sea of information out there can be mesmerizing and daunting at times. And so thinking through that is a big part of the puzzle, which takes us to a great build for the next question here. I do continue to hear from HR and business leaders alike that creating a great experience is key. And we've talked a little bit about that. but it's clearly not enough to win the talent needed for your business. It is about something more. And we've started to scratch the surface on this. And I want to hear more on this from the panel. With so much focus now on reaching out to passive candidates, given the supply and demand stuff that we've talked about so far, and finding the ones that best fit your organization, yet knowing that's in the hands of the candidate to decide, we have an obligation now to help candidates cut through the noise and make sure the talent that's out there understands really who you are and what your company's all about. It is, after all, about finding the right talent that fits for your company. So how are companies able to do this in today's social media and open information internet environment? And Mike, I'll call on you and build on your 12 to 18 comment, because you have a passion.
Yeah, I think this is definitely one of those macro trends that we're seeing companies really embrace. And it's this idea of, we talk about this idea of hiring with purpose, right? It's not just about the job or the salary or the location. I think today candidates are really looking for, why am I going to work for your company? I've got these 3 other offers. I mean, the market today is hyper competitive, and so just like you're looking for a company or a product that that inspires you, or brand. I think a lot of candidates are looking for that right fit. So it's important for the company to really get through the noise. You can't just take a job and post it on your Twitter feed or post it on your career site. You need to be telling stories, right? Candidates resonate with telling stories. If you look at Thermo Fisher as a great example, and you go to their career site, they've got these really authentic stories about what it means to work at Thermo Fisher, as an example. And if you're that, in that space, it really may connect with you versus something else. So I think that's what companies need to tap into. They need to get their employee stories. They have to have, it has to be authentic. It can't be a fake story. Come work for us, we're great. But it has to be those differentiators that you get out in front. And when it comes to social media, the great part about social media is that, we all have digital footprints. We all can be found. If you've got the right technology, you can find the people. The question is, when you find them, what's the message? What's going to get them to say, oh, that company looks interesting. I want to see what else they're doing. And so I think that's where the opportunity is for a lot of companies. Is you got to get those stories. You got to use technology to get in front of the right audiences, get them engaged, and you're gonna drive much higher quality pipelines.
Great, John. You had something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, so helping companies cut through the noise on social footprints is, effectively a big part of what we do. So we see this every single day. What I would say high level is, I think we're moving from a world in which people find jobs into one in which jobs find people. And I think for the vast majority of people who are finding employment today, that's not the case. But it is starting to change for more and more people. And as that change happens, what you see is a hunger for, okay, if I know I need to be reaching out to more people, who are those people? How can I effectively reach out? Messaging, as Mike said, is super important. But even simple things like, what time of day is a good time to send an email? Who should that email come from? And these are things that marketers and salespeople have A/B tested over the years to the infinite level. But these are just starting to hit recruiting. So I believe that recruiting in general can learn a lot from sales and marketing, and you'll see the approach to reaching out to candidates look more like a sales approach, look more like a marketing approach in the coming years.
Great. Others have anything to add on that?
Jeff, I'll add one experiment that we've done at Cornerstone over the last few years is we've tried to tie in our candidate experience that you'd experience online and match that offline as well. So we do a lot of things around billboards in Los Angeles. We've done advertisements on buses. And part of that is to showcase the diversity of the talent and also the diversity of the roles. But I think, as the other panelists suggested, is that you've got to, if you do those things, you also have to match it with a really great online experience, whether it's social media, whether it's figuring out the right time to approach them, whether it's through that candidate experience as well. The other thing that we try to do is personalize that experience. So when I come to the Cornerstone career site, I can type in the exact job that I want, and it's going to provide a number of positions that may match what I want personally to experience at the company. So I know we're all technology companies, and we certainly think technology is important, but I also think it's also important to match other aspects outside of technology and make it that true seamless experience. Because, I think as John has highlighted here, we gotta find where the candidates are. and that, jobs are going to find the candidates here. And so we got to spread our wings in lots of different ways and try to think about it out of the box, because it is hyper competitive.
It's kind of interesting. Old becomes new, right? And I hear you talk about billboards and buses and things of that sort. And I think it becomes differentiated to touch on some of those things. You also mentioned something that was interesting to me, John, this friction between, we are doing sales and marketing work after all with candidates, where jobs are finding the candidates. Yet, as I've heard Mark and others talk about, but there's this intimate core connection around fit and purpose and changing someone's life that has to blend together. So maybe we'll learn from sales and marketing, and maybe we'll put a little more of that into the sales and marketing cycle back to them, and we can make a virtuous cycle out of the two. So I think that's great. Well, let's jump on to the next topic here, and it'll build right on that, which sounds great. And this one's for you, John. It seems data and analytics are the trend in everything we do these days to gain insights as competitive advantages. More and more you hear about software is less about the process it manages and the data it collects. So talk to me a little bit about what insights are most critical in the hiring process from your perspective and the customers you serve, and why, and then we'll open it up to the panel.
Yeah, I think that from my standpoint in meeting with a lot of heads of talent, one of the things that I see is a hunger out there for more than just reporting, more than just, give me a sense of what happened in the past, but really moving to a world in which the newer vendors will start to predict the future. And I think that's something that's really, really critical when you think about the day-to-day of someone running recruiting inside of a company is, I want to know what's next. I want to be able to see around that corner coming up. And I think that the technology is getting there. I don't know that there's a clear sense yet of exactly what it will look like. But what we do know is that these companies are sitting on top of massive amounts of data. And they're using predictive technologies in other parts of their business, from retail to purchasing to marketing and advertising. And so I think it's only a matter of time until this hits recruiting. And I think one of the key aspects here is that our systems have to play well together, because if you've got your data in 5 or 6 disparate systems and they don't talk to one another, it's going to be really tough to get a unified and predictive view of the world. So I think a key thing is integrations and partnerships and people coming together collectively to realize that that will produce the best experience ultimately for the customer.
Right. And Mark, I know you've been on this journey for a long time from knowing you from our past. Talk to me a little bit about how you think about using data and the insights in this process.
Yeah, no, it's I think our customers generally already suffer from an over deluge of data, right? Like if you think about, like, you're a large Fortune 100 company for hiring 50,000 people a year, you already have 10 to 12 million applicants for those roles, right? And so one thing that's been really exciting to me is, and for us as an organization, is how do you figure out, how do you go deeper into the data you already have, like the people you already have, the people that are already coming to you? Because if you can't find 50,000 hires out of 10 million applicants, you're not going to find 50,000 hires out of 12 million applicants, right? And it's like our teams are overwhelmed, our customers are overwhelmed, the recruiters are overwhelmed. And so I think there's a tremendous opportunity for value creation inside of talent acquisition if you have a better way of making sense of it all. Right, it's like when you build out a data warehouse inside of your company, and you're like, great, now we can build shinier reports of stuff that we have no idea what to interpret or what to handle or what to do about it. And so for us, it was a deluge of, oh, I have 100,000 interviews. Can you tell me which ones are the good ones? And we're like, that's actually a very interesting question to ask. Let us get back to you. And that was 3 years ago when we started getting really deep into machine learning and kind of being first to market around that.
Helpful. Well, let's build on that. Jason, turning to you, I know that, and we've touched upon this a little bit already, technology integrations allow us to generate those meaningful insights when we combine the recruiting related data with our other business information. And I'm curious, what such insights and particular data sources do you see as important to leveraging and getting the full value out of the recruiting data that you have beyond just the recruiting process itself?
Jeff, it's a great question, and I think it probably means something different for every company out there, depending on what data that they use, what sources of data that they use. I would hope that every company's traditional applicant tracking system is a treasure trove of data. And what we find is most people, as I think Mark just indicated, just don't leverage that data to full effect. I think as John indicated, there's no silver bullet, meaning, I've yet to find, and I've been in this industry for nearly 15 years, one solution that can do everything for every recruiter, every talent acquisition out there, right? We live in a world where you've got to rely on different technologies, and that technology stack changes over time. But what you have to do is find the technology that works well together, where you can pick and pull the data that you want. There's a lot of valuable data that companies sit on today that they're not leveraging for one reason or another. And I would suggest that that's the first place to start is look at the data that you have. Then you can start to look at third-party sources of data to start to bring in. But to me, that's the starting point is to figure out where that data is. How do you collectively look at it together? And then, what are you trying to achieve at the end of the day that's going to be most effective or most use of that data? Because it's always going to be changing.
Great. Others have anything to add to that? All right, we'll move right along. So let's talk a little bit more about machine learning, artificial intelligence. And we touched upon it slightly here, but I'll start with you, John, and then we'll jump to you, Mark. AI is one of the hottest topics in HR technology right now. I'm curious to get your take on the role you see AI playing really in the entire HR technology stack.
Yeah, so when you walked the floor at HR Tech last year, you saw a lot of companies talking about AI. And, it's interesting because, first of all, many of those companies actually don't employ data scientists. So nowadays in the world of transparency and LinkedIn and being able to check up on people, you can actually verify that. So I will call that on a few companies. But I think most importantly, it's what is the purpose of whether it's AI or machine learning or data science or predictive analytics or fill in the buzzword. What is the purpose? And if you can't define a purpose for your customer as to why you have this in your product, it's meaningless. So what we really try to do is steer the conversation to what are you trying to accomplish? And if it takes AI or ML or predictive analytics to accomplish that, fantastic. But at the same time, for many of the problems that are being solved or need to be solved, you don't need data science. And therefore, I think you're applying the wrong tool to the problem. So I think it gets into what are you trying to do and what technology do you need to solve it? And that's the core of a lot of the conversations we have with our customers.
Great. Mark, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, for us, the beauty of kind of machine learning, deep learning AI inside of the HR tech space is that it's really the ultimate kind of closed loop process, right? You have an original data source, say applicant data, performance data, whatever that might be, and then you have an outcome that is measured against who got hired, who didn't, who turned over, who didn't, who showed up, who hit quota, who you name it. And for 50 years. We've spent we've built an entire industry inside of HR around IO psychology and assessments and selection and all these kind of different elements to try to bring a scientific approach to analyzing that data. The issue is the science isn't bad, it's just the scalability that is, right? And so, you're like, hey, I have one IO psychologist, but I have 500 recruiters that are doing phone interviews. I have one IO psychologist, but I have 100 people doing this. I have a team of leadership development people, like your experience, Jeff, but I have 2,000 managers who all think they know how to do this better, right? And so when you think about that from like kind of the core tenets of AI and machine learning, it's like, well, how do you get a deeper level of detail inside of a piece of information? How do you process it in a way that replicates a human-like behavior, like listening to phone interviews or asking questions and getting answers and doing that, and then map that to outcomes, and then massively turn up the processing element behind that. So you can use tactics like K-folding and whatever that might be that totally blows away traditional validation studies done from an IO psychology perspective. And so we're super psyched about it in terms of what we're seeing. I mean, in our use case, it's saying, listen, let's take these videos, let's transcribe, let's automatically understand what's being said in it, how they're saying it, the emotions they're displaying while they're in it, and then mapping that to performance outcomes. And it totally revolutionizes the way assessments have been done previously. And you can imagine the types of applicable use cases inside of our customer base, like what John does and what Mike does and what Jason's doing over at Cornerstone around your data warehouses and talent management systems and you name it. And there's this yearning ultimately from our customers of saying we constantly have to do more with less. We are totally overburdened with what we currently have, and we have a closed loop system that we think we can learn from. Like, I think when you bring in the data scientists, when you bring in the IO psychologists, when you bring in and the kind of the people that love this type of stuff, it's really an awesome opportunity for them to dig in.
Well, I think we are getting to the point where we can put science to the art that is the space that we exist in. So
it does feel like a little bit. I just want to comment on what John mentioned, that AI is like the new big data term. It's like, I need AI, we need AI, recruiting's the hate. It's like, so, what are you trying to do with it? Well, I don't know, make a better process. So I do think that there's a little bit of buzz around this idea of AI without companies are really thinking around like, how am I going to use that? And I think, Mark gave an example of, hey, if you can use certain technology to get better outcomes, it's great. But I think people should be, just a little bit weary of, what are you trying to do in terms of applying a technology if you don't know what the problem is.
It's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, I'll add on to that as well, which is, I think everyone's referring to AI as Siri or Alexa or something that's, this new thing that's speaking from the walls that's telling you to a question. And I'm not sure that's the ultimate answer. I mean, we have a Siri at my home, and the best use of Siri is to tell us jokes. And maybe that's what we need in talent acquisition, is someone to tell us jokes every once in a while. But, the fact of the matter is, for us and our viewpoint at Cornerstone is AI needs to be infused into everything, either a recruiter or someone that's developing learning and training within our organization to supplement their job. Over time, it will change, but I think there's uses of AI technology today, which is delivering more insights and power to someone that maybe they weren't necessarily thinking about before. Right. Talent acquisition, maybe you have this great candidate, but as Mark suggested earlier, oftentimes today we don't have that perfect job and the perfect candidate that match. We got to be a little bit creative. And so that's where I think AI can start to help us to tell us, hey, there's 5 other candidates that may fit that don't necessarily have that exact experience or that, what the IO psych wants to see, but has a skill set, has an experience level, and has some attributes that actually could match perfectly for the job. And that's where I think, even today, some things that we're doing in quote unquote AI or machine learning or choose your great buzzword can do today. And I think we're there today, but I think it's also going to look very different in the future.
Well, I know we're wrapping up here time-wise, so I'm gonna call an audible and give you guys one last question. Take a moment and think about one phrase that you each think describes the future of TA technology. And while you're thinking about that, I'll call you guys. I will now do my thanks to the panel. This is a fantastic group of innovators that we've got here sharing their viewpoints with us. And I know that the audience is going to take away a lot from the conversation that we've had. So thank you for participating. And now we'll take your last phrase. I think I gave you as good a lead as I can. I'm going to start with you, John. What's your phrase?
Oh, man, you put me on the spot. All I can come up with is a line from a song, I've seen the future and it's better there. So I'm just going to roll with that.
I like it. I'll buy it. All right, Mark, how about you?
It's going to continue to grow bigly.
All right. I got a bunch of marketeers, I think, on here today. All right, Jason, how about you?
Oh, man, I am boring. I mean, it's changing. What we do today is what's going to be very different and should be different even a year from now.
Great. Mike, how about you bring us home?
I'm not good at this either, but I'll just go with smarter connections.
Like it. Well, thanks, everybody. Been a great conversation, and I know the audience will enjoy it. It was my pleasure.